Ladies and gentlemen, welcome for our third launch of the year from the Guyana Space Center, the first with Ariane 5 in 2015. Tonight, Ariane 5 is set to deliver into a standard geostationary transfer orbit, Thor 7 for Telenor Satellite Broadcasting in Norway, and Sicral 2 for the Italian Ministry of Defense and the French Direction Générale de l'Armement in the frame of a contract with Telespazio. Ariane 5 will be required a performance slightly below 9.8 tons. It will have a window of 1 hour and 54 minutes to lift off. I would like to thank Telenor for entrusting Arianespace with the launch of this new satellite manufactured by our partner SSL. Once on location at 0.8 degrees west, Thor 7 will strengthen Telenor position by maintaining its leading broadcast position in the Nordic region and by further developing its role as a major distributor of satellite services to the maritime and offshore sectors. I am also grateful to the Italian Ministry of Defense and French DGA for having relied in the frame of a contract signed with Telespazio upon Arianespace's capacity to provide Europe with guaranteed access to space. After Athena Fidus, successfully launched by Arianespace in 2014, Sicral 2 is another example of the key cooperation between Italy and France in the domain of satellite secure communications. This cooperation is also highlighted by the selection of Thales Arianespace for the manufacturing of Sicral 2. Tonight, Arianespace is thus particularly proud to be in charge of a launch mission representative of the diversity of its customers and missions, commercial and institutional, civil and military. But our 78th Ariane 5 is now being readied for liftoff, so enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome. I'm Katie Haswell and we are live at the Guyana Space Center for the third launch of the year. A thoroughly European launch for both civilian and military customers based in Norway, Italy and France. There's Ariane on the pad. On board we've got our two passengers, the telecommunications satellite, Thor 7, and the Franco-Italian Armed Forces satellite, Sicral 2. And you can see on the top right-hand side of the screen, there is our countdown. We are 11 minutes and 19 seconds to launch. Ariane 5 is a big and powerful beast. She's made of 4 sections. We call them stages. The first stage are those boosters, roughly the size, the weight of giving thrust of 6 jumbo jets each. The main stage there, the central core stage. And then above that, we have the upper stage, whose job it is to take the satellites to their final position. That weighs roughly the equivalent of a business jet. And above it, the fairing, that pointy bit. Inside there, we have our 2 satellites. You can see them, Thor 7 in the upper position for Telenor Satellite Broadcasting, weighing in at roughly 4.5 tons. Then you can see below it the black structure, and inside it, Sicral 2 for Telespazio, and weighing slightly under 4.5 tons. This is the Mission Control Center, about 18 kilometers from the pad. Various different operational teams here. This team is called the Flight Directorate, or the Flight Control Desk. It's Arianespace top management, and they take all the important decisions in the event of unplanned situations, and teams working across the base report directly to them in real time. You'll see them all on the phones. The first satellite to be separated will be Thor 7 for the private Norwegian operator Telenor, and it was built by Space Systems L'Oral.
It is with great pride that Arianespace is launching Thor 7 for Telenor, hence contributing to the expansion of this major European operator. We have been very honored to have been selected as the launch services provider after the launching of Thor 6 a few years ago. The launch campaign here in Kourou went very smoothly in a very friendly atmosphere between all the participants. Space Systems L'Oral is very familiar with our method of work and with the facilities, and actually there will be several other SSL spacecraft to be processed and launched from Kourou later this year. After 20 minutes of powered flight, that will be followed by a series of maneuvers by the upper stage, the two satellites will be released on their targeted transfer orbit, and then they will start their journey to their final destination on the geosynchronous arc.
And the second spacecraft to be separated will be Sicral 2, and that's going to be handling strategic and tactical communications for the French and Italian armed forces, as well as telecoms for NATO countries. Arianespace built it at their Rome and Turin facilities, and Telespazio will be operating the satellite.
Sicral 2 is a joint Italian-French program based on a geostationary satellite operating the UHF and SHF bands. It will enhance the MILSATCOM, or military satellite communication capabilities, already offered by the Italian satellite Sicral 1, Sicral 1B, and the French Syracuse system. The Sicral 2 project is the second collaboration of this kind between Italy and France with Telespazio and Thales Arianespace. In February 2014, last year, we successfully launched Atena Philus, a dual communication satellite from France and Italy. The Sicral 2 project is an important industrial collaboration between Telespazio and Thales Arianespace. These projects are an example of what Europe can achieve when bringing together the skills and expertise of its industries. In this case, Telespazio, Thales Arianespace, and Arianespace. The results reflect the many years of continued focus on industrial excellence.
A couple of key people here in Mission Control. One of those is the Range Operations Manager. Today it's Jean-Luc Voyer. And we have a hold in the countdown. The Range Operations Manager is the person who calls out.
VDO, arrêt du décompte, bulletin rouge, base. Que tous les moyens soient prêts pour la reprise de la chronologie à 0-7 minutes en cas de retour au vert.
So he's just announced that we have a hold in the countdown, and we are going to reset the clock for 8 o'clock UTC. The original launch was scheduled for 1937. And this is a perfectly normal situation. It's a hold in the clock is a well-rehearsed part of any launch. The system is designed specifically for this, and it's why we have the launch window. We have nearly a 2-hour launch window today. The launch window is the time during which we are able to launch, and we have 1 minute and 54 seconds. These are the status panels that you can see on the left-hand side, and they are a little bit like the dashboard in a car or a sort of traffic light situation. Red means stop and green means go. And of course, a launch is only authorized here at the Arianespace Center if everything is perfect and all the parameters are according to plan. So the countdown is stopping for about 20 minutes or so. We haven't reached the synchronized sequence yet. Once the synchronized sequence starts again, we'll be able to start counting down in the final countdown. The red panel is at the top. You can see there, autorisation, lancement in French, and that is the range. The ensemble de lancement in French actually is the range, and the range encompasses all the facilities here at the base. There are lots of buildings. The base spreads across an area of about 750 kilometres squared. That's roughly half the size of Rome and its suburbs, so it's pretty big, as you can imagine. And across the base there are all sorts of different facilities, all sending their status to these status panels. Right now we don't know which one it is, so we're going to wait and find out. We'll put some words on the screen to give you the rendezvous time. We've reset the clock and we'll be back in just over 20 minutes.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la reprise du temps des comptes. Top. Début de la séquence finale lanceur. Le nouvel H0 visé est 20h 0 secondes.
So we have now reset the clock for a new launch time of 8 o'clock universal time. That's 5 o'clock here in Kourou and 9 o'clock in some European countries. We're live at the Arianespace Centre. We're launching 2 satellites, Sicral 2 and Thor 7. They're up there inside the fairing. That is the nose of the launch vehicle. For anybody who is not familiar with a launch, they're inside there. The team's here at the Mission Control Centre, about 18 kilometres from the pad. We had a short stop in the countdown there, but the clock has turned green again and the countdown will restart. Those status panels that we saw are representing all the different systems across the base, and they all need to be working properly for us to launch. And the clock ticks permanently as long as no hold sign is given. But if one turns red, it means we have to stop and think. And that's what happened there. We had a launch base red. And the red is a routine way to flag a warning. It tells the other systems to wait and hold their operations. And it allows the system involved in the red to understand and fix the glitch. There's our launcher, Ariane 5, on the pad. It's the 222nd launch from the Arianespace Centre for an Ariane launch vehicle. The synchronized sequence has to run in its entirety in order for the vehicle to launch. It cannot be interrupted. That's why once we get to -7, we have to stop the clock if there is a glitch.
À tous de DDO, je confirme bien que la reprise du temps des comptes reprendra à 19h53 TU pour un nouvel H0 à 20h TU.
And he's just confirmed that we have a new launch time of 8 o'clock on the nose. 8 o'clock UTC. UTC, of course, sometimes known as GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Once we get to 7 minutes before 8 o'clock, the countdown will restart. As I was saying, the systems across the base send their information to the boards in mission control, and all of those have to be working correctly in order for the countdown to continue. And the synchronized sequence is the last 7 minutes of the countdown. That system has to run, those last 7 minutes have to run in order, and if it's interrupted, the clock has to be reset. There's Ariane on the pad. We're looking good for the weather at the moment, it appears. Cloudy skies, but no rain. We had the last few days here, we've had some rain. We are, of course, on the edge of the Amazon rainforest. It's not called the rainforest for nothing. And you can see those big masts on the right-hand side are the lightning masts. Here we go, the team's here in mission control. We have various different launch control centres and mission control centres here at the base. Mission control is the nerve centre. All the information comes here from across the range. And then each of the launch pads and launch zones have their own launch control centre. These guys and girls are sitting behind what we call the fishbowl, behind this glass. All the operational teams there, focusing hard at this point as we come up to launch. That big tower you can see on the right-hand side, the sort of orange thing, is the umbilical tower, housing all the connections. So if you look at the launch vehicle, you can see all those leads going from the launcher to the tower. And then if you follow your eye down, they travel down to right at the bottom, you can see what we call the launch table. And all those connections are in the launch table. When the launcher is rolled out to the pad from the assembly building, it actually is rolled out on that huge launch table. So it arrives looking just like that. And you can see there the trees at the bottom there, the Amazonian trees and forestation, because we are right on the edge of the water on the northeast coast of South America. Hot and humid. And the mosquitoes are just getting ready to come out around about this time. Not just yet, but soon. It may be that the folk in the viewing stations around the pad there might want to be getting their mosquito spray out. Two passengers on board there, waiting patiently for the clock to restart. Sicral 2 and Thor 7. Thor 7's at the top and Sicral 2 underneath.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la reprise du temps des comptes. Top. Début de la séquence finale lanceur.
And he's just announced the beginning again of the synchronized sequence. We now have gone into the automated phase. The computers are performing a whole set of checks and controls now before launch, and they're managing a very impressive list of operations. And of course, this is the final phase in a sequence of events bringing us to today.
Most of the elements that make up Ariane 5 come by ship from Europe. They then travel by road to the space base, where their assembly begins in the launcher integration building. Here, the main or lower stage is erected vertically. The two solid boosters, which are made in French Guiana, are transported to this building for positioning on either side of the main stage. Then the upper stage is integrated onto the lower stage, and at this point Ariane is moved to the final assembly building. The satellites arrived by plane. Thor 7 came on February 20th and Sicral 2 on March 4th. Satellites also follow a preparation campaign. It is carried out in parallel with assembly of the launch vehicle not far from the launch pad in facilities dedicated to satellite operations. Preparation includes weighing and testing by special teams in clean rooms. All satellite systems are checked, everything from electric cables to solar panels. With these tests completed, the satellites are then filled with the fuel they will need for their lives in space. These white suits worn by the crews are quite heavy. They weigh 17 kilos. Meanwhile, Arianespace and customer teams meet on a daily basis to review campaign activities. In all, a campaign takes 6 weeks to ready both launcher and satellites. When filled, the satellites in their turn move to the final assembly building. Here they are mated atop the launcher. Sicral 2 was put in place first in the lower position, then Thor 7 was enclosed inside the fairing, which was hoisted atop the launcher. The day before launch, the launcher rolls out to the pad. Here, Ariane 5 awaits the final countdown and the start of her mission.
Well, that was yesterday. Here's today. Here we are back in mission control. And as you heard earlier, I mentioned that the base is a pretty huge place. It covers nearly half the size of Rome, and there are so many different facilities here, mainly the launch zones, satellite facilities, and a whole range of other buildings. And we call it the range. That includes actually the downrange stations, or the ground stations, which are dotted along the flight path, and they track the launch vehicle as it flies over. You can imagine the logistics involved in everybody communicating with each other, and that's why all the information is sent here to Mission Control, and everybody listens to the Range Operations Manager. So the other control room, which is important here, is the Launch Control Center. This is about 3 kilometers from the pad, and it's often known as the bunker. Various different teams working here. One's responsible for ground operations, led by the Launch Site Operations Manager, and the quality team then make sure that all the regulations and rules are adhered to. Another team ensures the flight readiness of the vehicle. They're led by the Ariane production manager. There he is. And they oversee all the operations from the assembly of the launch vehicle to the moment of launch. And we also have a safeguarding team who make sure that all the operations are carried out according to very strict rules, guaranteeing the utmost safety here at the base. About a minute ago, the computers on Launch Control sent the liftoff time to the computers on Ariane. We were talking earlier about the umbilical tower. You can see, you may not see them very well from this angle, but if you go up to the top of the vehicle, you can see 2 arms. We'll get another angle on this in just a second, and they are feeding cryogenic propellants into the upper stage of the launch vehicle. You can see them there, 3/4 of the way up on the right-hand side, 2 great big, we call them the cryogenic arms, clamping to the vehicle, and that's where they attach. The cryogenic fuel is actually incredibly, incredibly cold, minus 253 degrees for the hydrogen and minus 150 for the oxygen. We have to keep them that cold in order to maintain them as liquids. And they do tend to evaporate, so we keep those arms there right until 7 seconds before launch, and we disconnect them just before launch. You'll see them dropping away. The folk here going outside now to view the launch from the viewing station. You'll see a 7-second delay between the initial ignition and liftoff. That's because we'll be checking the Vulcan engine before we light the boosters.
Attention pour moins une minute. Top à 0 moins 1 minute.
1 minute to launch, and we are live at the Arianespace Center. We are orbiting Thor 7 for Telenor and built by Space Systems Générale, and Sicral 2 for Telespazio and the French and Italian Ministries of Defense, built by Thales Arianespace. Our very best wishes to everybody involved in today's launch.
À tous de DDO, attention pour les décomptes finales. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage EAP, décollage. La propulsion est nominale.
There she goes, hauling herself against the gravity of
La
our
propulsion
planet.
est nominale.
Everything's normal, he says. The propulsion is normal. We broke the sound barrier at 48 seconds after launch and went into Mach 1. And we're only now getting the sound here at the Jupiter Control Center as she flies over. I can feel the ground shaking. Blazing a trail across the sky here at the Arianespace
Tous les
Center.
paramètres à bord sont nominaux.
After the initial 13-second vertical climb, we rotated to the east and we're heading out over the Atlantic Ocean. We're burning 3 engines, but the boosters, those 2 big boosters, are doing all the work right now. They're providing 90% of our thrust. And if we get lucky, we might even see them falling away with the naked eye. The boosters are burning at 3,000 degrees Celsius. And
La
the
propulsion est nominale.
main stage that they're attached to is at virtually at absolute zero, so you can imagine the incredible complexities of the temperatures there, a feat of human engineering. And those boosters,
Séparation des étages d'accélération à poudre.
are falling away. We've had confirmation there. We can see them, the 2 dots, just through the clouds, falling back to Earth. They've burnt
La
their
propulsion
propellant.
est nominale.
We don't need them anymore. And we've lost about 3/4 of our mass in just over 2 minutes. So now we're burning the main stage. You can see it there, the grey structure, the big
La
tank,
trajectoire est nominale.
a huge tank of cryogenic propellant. It's going to burn for about 9 minutes. And you can see at the front there, the fairing on the right-hand side. You can see the image there. The fairing is the nose of the vehicle, protecting our
Tous les paramètres à
satellites
bord sont nominaux.
from the rigors of the launch, from the sound and the acoustic waves at launch. It's obviously very, very loud.
Largage de la coiffe.
And of course, friction. If you look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you can see we're 114 kilometers above the Earth. That means we're on the outer edge of the atmosphere. There's no friction anymore. We're on the edge of space, and we don't need the fairing. So it falls back down to Earth, and we can see Thor 7, our first satellite
La
there.
trajectoire est nominale.
He said everything's going according to plan. We can see Thor 7 at the front for the very first time, and the 2 grey rectangles are the solar panels. Behind it, we can't see it now because it's hidden under the cylinder, is Sicral 2. We're powering across the Atlantic using the Vulcan engine. It's very powerful.
Propulsion est nominale.
It burns 320 kilograms of propellant a second. That's about 500 times more than a jet engine. The computer-generated images that we're looking at are showing us what the experts have planned and calculated is happening to the launcher.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
He says, tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. All the parameters on board are normal. And, we're seeing there the tracking station at Galileo. That's the tracking station at the Arianespace Center. And the computer-generated images are what's actually happening in space. Basically, the teams plan a very precise schedule of events based on extremely accurate predictions. And they put all of that information into the computer, and these images are a simulation of those predictions. We took off 5 minutes and 23 seconds ago. As I was mentioning, these computer-generated images are really showing us pretty well what's happening, exactly what we're expecting to be happening. And there we go, another replay there of our superb launch. The folk in mission control. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see our altitude there on the left-hand side. We are 163 kilometers above the Earth. In the middle, you can see the distance. That's the distance from the pad if you were to draw a line across the ground. And on the bottom right-hand side is our speed. At the moment, we are traveling at 4.29 kilometers per second, ladies and gentlemen. Let me, boys and girls, let me remind you that's per second, not per hour. So we are traveling at phenomenal speeds. And we're heading out across the Atlantic. He says we've got 2 minutes left of propulsion on the main stage. Our flight path takes us along the equator towards Africa. And we'll start separating the satellites just over the east coast of Africa. Picking up speed all the time here. You can see the trajectory on the top right-hand side of the screen. The curve is the predicted trajectory of the vehicle, and the dot is the actual position of the launcher. And we're tracking our launcher using ground stations as she flies over. It's called telemetry. They've got great big dishes, a bit like ears. They're listening out for the launcher. And Ariane sends data to those ground stations, which tells us how the flight is progressing in real time. And later we can see how the vehicle performed in a process which is called the Level 0 flight evaluation. And you can see there we're picking up the signal there at the next tracking station in Natal on the right, on the northeastern coast there. In Brazil, he's just given us the confirmation there that we've picked up the signal. So we've travelled from Galileo, you can see as the tracking station there on the left, on the west, in the Arianespace Center, and Natal in the northeastern coast of Brazil. Quite a lot of advantages for launching from the equator. It's the fastest route to geostationary orbit. And also, the natural rotation of the Earth gives us additional speed on the equator. So if you think about it, the launcher is actually already moving in the right direction, even when it's on the pad. Obviously, that's when we're launching to the east, of course.
Fin de propulsion de l'étage principal cryotechnique.
Main stage has cut off its engine. It's burnt all its propellant.
Séparation EPC.
And it's falling back down. There are images from a previous launch. We had cameras on board a previous launch. Look at that, superb. And you can see the curvature of the Earth and the main stage as it falls back down there. So we are now entering the next phase of the flight. The upper stage has taken the wheel, and its job is to deliver our satellites to their orbit. We're shedding weight, of course. We started with 774 tons, and we've got about 3% of that left. The lighter we are, the faster we go. Might seem obvious to us now, but it wasn't always, actually. It was, of course, Sir Isaac Newton who identified that back in the 1680s. That's when he presented his 3 laws of motion. And then about 20 years earlier, he'd developed his theories about gravity. And of course, that was when an apple fell on his head, and he was only 23 years old at the time, so it's quite remarkable. Of course, most of the laws at the heart of that are also at the heart of rocket science. Our first satellite to be separated will be Thor 7. There it is at the front. And our friends at Space Systems Loral manufactured it for Telenor using their LS1300 platform. This is the 47th satellite built by Loral that Arianespace has launched, and there are 15 more in the order book.
La propulsion est nominale.
SSL is the world's leading provider of commercial satellites, with a broad range of capabilities to support satellite operators and innovative space-related missions. Telenor Satellite Broadcasting, a major provider of broadcast and data communication services, owns and operates the Thor satellite fleet, positioned at 1 degree west, which provides high-powered and high-quality satellite capacity throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Together, SSL and Telenor have partnered to expand the benefits of the digital world with the multi-gigabit, high-throughput Thor 7 satellite. The spacecraft is a multi-mission satellite and features Telenor's first high-performance Ka-band payload for the maritime market. It is the highest-performing satellite payload designed specifically for service to ships at sea. The satellite also includes a Ku-band payload, which will provide growth capacity for TV broadcast services.
Thor 7 is actually a very important satellite for our company. Unlike our previous satellites, Thor 5 and Thor 6, that were a replacement, in orbit for older satellites, this is really a brand new satellite for expansion. So in other words, it's going to give us opportunities to grow our business, both in the broadcasting area as well as in the data communication area.
The satellite's Ka-band payload has up to 25 simultaneously active spot beams, offering up to 9 gigabits per second throughput for cost-effective solutions and high-power coverage over the North Sea, the Norwegian Sea, the Red Sea, the Baltic Sea, and the Mediterranean. This translates to reliable download speeds in the tens of megabits per second, even to small antennas, and uplink speeds up to 6 megabits per second. The satellite's Ku-band payload has 11 transponders and provides expanded broadcast service to meet the demand for high-definition television in Central and Eastern Europe. At SSL, in Palo Alto, California, a very skilled and experienced team of engineers and technicians worked diligently to make Thor 7 an exceptional satellite. This spacecraft is based on the highly reliable SSL 1300 platform and implements innovative and sophisticated technologies to complement Telenor's full fleet of satellites.
SSL and Telenor share a tremendous focus for quality and reliability, and certainly, as we have proven, integrity in our business relationship.
SSL would like to thank its customer Telenor for putting its confidence in SSL's technology and leadership in designing and building commercial satellites. For SSL, it was a privilege to furnish Thor 7 to Telenor, a company that prides itself on providing the power of digital communications to improve lives and secure a better future for all.
And during that film, we picked up the signal at the tracking station in a little tiny island in the middle of the Atlantic called Ascension Island. It's volcanic. It's about 88 kilometers square, and I may be wrong, but I think it's got roughly about 1,000 people on the island. According to Wikipedia, the territory includes the remotest populated archipelago on Earth, the Tristan da Cunha archipelago. And Ascension Island played a very important role during the Apollo era, and right now the teams there are picking up the data from Ariane and sending it to the telemetry team here at the Guyana Space Center. "144 kilometers above the Earth, we are coming up to 4,500 kilometers from the pad along the ground. And look at that speed. We're really, really starting to pick up speed now, whereas all our power before was getting us away from the Earth. We're just starting to climb in altitude. We need to pick up speed to do that, and you can see there the trajectory on the right-hand side. You can see that initial ascent was very steep, and then we plateaued out a bit, and that was so that we could pick up speed, so that now at this point in the flight we can really start to climb. We're looking here at the images. You can see if you look at the right-hand side, you can see the flame of the engine of the upper stage. The sort of grey and white disc is the upper stage of the vehicle. Then if you travel along to the left, you can see a black structure. That's what we call the cylinder. It's protecting the Sicral 2 satellite, which is underneath it. And at the front, you can see, or you could see there, Thor 7. This is the second time that we've launched for the Norwegian operator, Telenor. And here the Sicral teams. Sicral is a wholly European project. It's a European military satellite built and operated by European industry, delivered to space by Europe's launch service provider, Arianespace, of course, and Arianespace built it at their satellite facilities in Rome and Turin and tested it in Cannes. It's actually the 141st time that Arianespace has launched one of their satellites, and they've got 10 more in the order book. And the people in charge of the ground segment are Telespazio. Sicral 2 is for the Italian Ministry of Defence and the French Military Procurement Agency, and this is the 30th satellite that Arianespace has launched for them. And I think it's very fair to say that space is becoming increasingly important for supporting military activities. Until a few years ago, space was limited to strategic intelligence. Now it plays a hugely important role in ground operations.
Il progetto del Sicral 2, il progetto di questo satellite, è stato voluto dal Ministero della Difesa italiano e dal Ministero della Difesa francese già nel 2007. È un progetto molto importante, un satellite che ha grandissima flessibilità, pensato, progettato in Italia e frutto della collaborazione fra i nostri due paesi. Guardare lo spazio è fondamentale per le forze armate, ma non solo. E aver prodotto un satellite di questa qualità e con queste caratteristiche va sicuramente ad onore sia dell'Italia che della Francia. E in questo modo noi costruiamo anche un pezzo della difesa europea. Intanto Italia e Francia sono le uniche che sono riuscite a realizzare un progetto così importante in un campo così fondamentale per il futuro come lo spazio. Noi ci auguriamo che possa aprirsi ad altri paesi europei, perché sappiamo che la vera costruzione della difesa europea si costruisce attraverso la capacità di portare avanti progetti comuni come questo. Quindi i migliori auguri a Sicral 2.
Buonasera. Sicral è una storia di successo. Un successo che ha consentito al Ministero della Difesa italiano di acquisire una capacità operativa primaria, direi unica al mondo. È un successo per l'industria nazionale che ha consentito di sviluppare tecnologie, prodotti, soluzioni e competenze a disposizione di questo piano. Siamo particolarmente orgogliosi di aver contribuito sin dalle origini e oggi da contribuire nella messa in orbita del satellite, nell'inserimento nell'orbita finale, nei test che saranno fatti per validare il funzionamento in orbita e infine contribuiremo al mantenimento in condizioni operative dopo aver sviluppato il ground segment anche attraverso il nostro centro del Fucino. Ringraziamo tutti, ringraziamo il Ministero della Difesa italiano e francese E ringraziamo tutti i nostri partner e colleghi dell'industria perché è stato uno sforzo grande e che ha portato sicuramente a dei risultati misurabili. Ora dobbiamo guardare avanti. Dopo il pathos di questa sera, dobbiamo pensare al successo futuro della famiglia Sicral.
Nell'ambito del programma Sicral 2, Telespazio è responsabile dello sviluppo, realizzazione, integrazione e verifica del Satellite Control Center primario a Vigna di Valle e secondario presso la sede del Fucino. Inoltre è anche responsabile della realizzazione del sistema di interconnessione tra i centri di controllo missione italiani e francesi. In aggiunta a ciò, Telespazio gestisce il servizio di lancio, le fasi di LEOP e di IoT, le prime fasi di acquisizione del satellite in volo. Come già fatto per la precedente missione Sica 1B, Telespazio ha cofinanziato la missione Sicral 2, rendendosi pertanto azienda leader nella resa di servizi di telecomunicazioni per le forze armate alleate.
Sicral 2 is an end-to-end system composed by the space segment, that is the satellite, and the ground segment, which is devoted to the control of the satellite and the management of the communication. In this context, Thales Arianespace has been responsible of the overall architecture, of the development of the satellite, and of the development of the ground segment devoted to the communication control. From industrial point of view, Thales Arianespace has offered to the Italian and French defense customer a product which is the best combination of the technology available in Italy and France, offering this way a product which is at the state of art. Sicral 2 has been conceived from a system point of view as an integrated design for the ground segment and for the space segment, but it allows, in the meantime, a separate management of the communication for the French mission and for the Italian mission.
I am very happy to share with you this unique moment in the life of the Sicral 2 program. Sicral 2, as well as Athena Fidus, launched in February 2014, are symbols. They are concrete examples of cooperation in the field of governmental space telecommunications, called for by the European Council in December 2013. The French and Italian Ministries of Defense had foreseen this as early as 2007. Thales Arianespace's expertise in the field of military space telecommunications is unrivaled. This expertise has been built over the last 30 years in Italy and France with the Sicral and Syracuse programs. These investments have led to the development of know-how and resources which are essential for the Franco-Italian industry on the international stage. Our industrial capacity, unmatched in Italy and in France, will be used once again for programs such as SAT-NG and Sicral 3. I wish to warmly thank Soyuz and Vega and the DGA, the French Defense Procurement Agency, for their trust, as well as the teams of our industrial partners for the quality of their cooperation. I'm very proud that Thales Arianespace, in cooperation with Telespazio, was a major industrial partner for Sicral 2, a truly fantastic program.
And unbelievably, we crossed Africa during that film. The tracking station in Libreville picked up the signal about 5 minutes ago. There's a Sicral program director. And that's on the west coast of Africa in Gabon. And then Malindi in Kenya has just picked up the signal, and which means we're now over the east coast of Africa. And Malindi will be tracking us from now on. We're really climbing into space. You can see there on the right-hand side the trajectory and our altitude there, 500 and coming up to 532 kilometers above the Earth. We're traveling at a speed of 9.23 kilometers per second. We're getting close now to the point where we'll be switching off our engine. And to do that, we need to get to 635 kilometers above the Earth. That's another 100 kilometers to go, and you'll see that we're going to do that very quickly. How does the onboard computer know when to send the cutoff command? Well, it's very clever. It has its inertial guidance system, which senses the orientation of the launcher. You can see there the scheduled cutoff time. We've switched off our engine and we're entering what we now call the ballistic phase.
Extinction de l'étage supérieur cryotechnique.
We have confirmation there from the range operations manager that we've switched off the engine. The upper stage is now entering the ballistic phase. Ballistic actually means without propulsion.
Début de la manœuvre d'orientation au profit de la charge utile haute Thor 7.
We're travelling high enough and fast enough to cruise without the engine, and this actually means that we are now on our orbit. We have to climb a little bit higher before we can start separating Thor 7. Our separation orbit is actually 1,126 kilometres altitude. It's going to take us another 3 minutes or so to get there. And just out of interest, Sicral 2's injection orbit will be 2,427 kilometres above the Earth. That's about 1,300 kilometres higher than Thor 7. So we're now going through a very carefully planned set of manoeuvres, and we call this the space ballet because it's a bit of a dance in its own right. The upper stage is orientating the satellites. Once we release them, they continue their journey on their own. They'll have to travel for about 5 days to get to their final orbits. They'll have to climb up to 36,000 kilometres above our planet. And in order for them to do that, we have to put them in a very precise position, a very precise attitude. And in order to do this, the upper stage has a brain. It's controlling all of these manoeuvres, and it's in what we call the vehicle equipment bay. It's very smart. It's made of 2 computers, and it can even take its own decisions. It takes into account information from the tank, from the engines, etc. And then if there are different options, it always chooses the one which maximizes the success of the mission. Every satellite has to be positioned into a different orbit, and the upper stage has to twist in any direction that we want in order to be able to do that. And it has 6 thrusters, which give tiny little bursts of gas. And those thrusters can move it in any direction we need it to go. Don't need much power to do that. So we're getting close now to what we call the injection point. That's where we will separate the first satellite, Thor 7. Remember, the altitude was 1,126 kilometres. Getting close. Concentration levels very high at this point as we wait for separation.
Séparation de la charge utile Thor 7.
And we have confirmation there that we have separated Thor 7, our first satellite. Congratulations to Telenor and Space Systems Générale and all the teams involved. Now we can see it separating there. It's actually being pinged into space by a set of springs.
Au profit du SILDA.
A set of springs, a little bit like a jack-in-a-box. When you open the box, it pops out, and that's exactly what happens. We can see Thor 7 moving away there. It's all very carefully planned in order to avoid parts bumping into each other in space. It's called collision avoidance. So Thor 7's now heading out on its own journey. It's got to get to its orbital slot, which is 0.8 degrees west. And it's got to climb to 36,000 kilometres above the Earth. It's going to take it 5 days to get there. In the meantime, we'll still have Sicral 2 attached. It's underneath that black structure, the Silda. And so Ariane has more work to do. We need to climb to 2,400. And he's telling us that all the manoeuvres are going nominally according to plan. It's going to take us another 4 minutes or so to get to our next separation orbit. We've got a few more manoeuvres to perform before we can get there. Just to remind you, these computer-generated graphics are showing us all of those movements. We're watching exactly what's been planned. The experts have put the data into the computer and it generates these images. So this is effectively what's happening in space. Every time you see a twist or a turn or a flash of an engine, that's exactly what's been planned. So Thor 7 deploys its solar arrays after separation. It's going to have to power up when satellites deploy their solar arrays. It's a little bit like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon. The teams are taking it over now, and tomorrow it'll switch on its engine for the first of 4 burns. That's going to take it to its orbit. And in 8 days' time, it'll deploy its reflectors, switch its payload on in 10 days, and then 12 days' time, they'll start testing. Best of luck to all the teams with the next phase of those operations. Right now, the teams here at the Guyana Space Center are receiving the telemetry. Here we can see them. It's called the CVI, the Real-Time Visual Control. As I said earlier, Ariane sends information to the tracking stations as she flies over, and those tracking stations send the data here to the CVI. They receive more than 100 pieces of information at any one time. They have to make quick selections to check how the flight is progressing now in real time. And then later on, they'll be analysing all that data just to see how the flight progressed and make any changes they might need to make for the next flight. And right now, it's the teams in Malindi who are receiving the information and sending it to them, to the CVI. Important time for all the teams tracking the vehicle. Everyone's poring over the data right now and concentrating hard. This is the 3rd launch this year from the Guyana Space Center. We had 3 launches using 3 different vehicles for 3 different applications. The first launch was the baby of the family. That was back in February. Vega orbited a European Space Agency craft. And then we had in March Soyuz, the medium lifter. If you think of Mummy Bear, Baby Bear and Daddy Bear, Soyuz would be Mummy Bear. And today, of course, Ariane 5, Daddy Bear, taking Thor 7 and Sicral 2 into space. Ariane 5 is the only vehicle in the world that can hoist 2 4 to 5 ton satellites into space at the same time. That's the black structure moving away, the cylinder.
Préparation du système de lancement double Ariane.
Known in French as the Système de Lancement Double Ariane. The cylinder performs various functions. It's a little bit like a fairing. It protects the lower satellite, and it also provides the attachment system. And there we can see on the right-hand side, Sicral 2 for the first time. And we can see its solar panels there. And that cylinder
Manœuvre d'orientation au profit de Sicral 2.
The cylinder is what makes those dual launches possible on Ariane 5. And Sicral 2 is the 63rd military payload launched by Arianespace. We're at 2,276 kilometers above the Earth, and you look at our speed, we've slowed down fractionally. That's because we've switched off our engine. We're travelling now at 8.13 kilometers per second. 12.5 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers from the pad if we were to draw a line across the ground. And we're coming up on separation now of our second satellite. The mood here, very focused. High levels of concentration. People have been working very hard on both of these projects. Some people working even for years. And teams have been working very hard over the last few days.
Séparation de la charge utile Sicral 2.
And we have separation of the Sicral 2 military telecommunications satellite. Congratulations to everybody at Telespazio, Arianespace, and the French and Italian Ministries of Defence. It's been a great campaign. Well done to all the teams. And to Telenor and Space Systems Générale. A job well done there. Ariane has delivered the satellites, but the work is just beginning now for everybody in the ground stations. They're taking charge of those satellites and monitoring the first maneuvers. For Sicral 2, 8 minutes after separation, the teams will be receiving the signal, and then a bit later the solar rays will partially deploy. And then in 8 days' time, the engine will switch on. Well, it's a big day for everybody, the culmination of many months and for some years, many years' work. And this was the site as we lifted off from the pad about 35 minutes ago. Teams congratulating each other here at the Jupiter Mission Control Center. Second delay between.
Allumage EAP, décollage.
There's a beautiful sight there. Ariane took off, blazing its trail across the sky here at the Générale Space Center, heading out across the Atlantic, and it has now delivered our 2 satellites. They're both starting their journey. They're heading to geostationary orbit, and for anybody who's unfamiliar with what that is, it's the orbit in space where the satellites effectively remain stationary above the Earth, beaming down. We're waiting here for the speeches now. There's some happy faces there. Everyone's worked really hard. So to describe geostationary orbit, if you were on a roundabout, if your child was on a roundabout and you were running along holding your child's hand, you'd effectively be staying in the same position as your child, but you would be running faster. That's a little bit like that. The satellites are orbiting our planet at tremendous speed, and that enables them to beam down. Going to be hearing shortly from the chairman and CEO here of Arianespace, Stéphane Israël. Right now, the Ariane launch vehicle, the final phase, the upper stage is just going through the final phases. It's actually distancing itself. It's a process called passivation. It has to be despun, and we have to put it into a safe orbit so that it can discharge its batteries and go into what we call graveyard orbit. Stéphane Israël coming up.
On peut y aller. Bien, Monsieur le Préfet, Mesdames et Messieurs les élus, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Arianespace is delighted to announce that according to our onboard telemetry system, Thor 7 and Sicral 2 were separated as planned after what should be another flawless mission for Ariane, the 64th success in a row. This success comes at the end of the weekend. It was expected at the beginning and it comes at the end. But this success is here thanks to the professionalism and the full commitment of the teams, and this is what matters. Now, long life to Thor 7 and Sicral 2 in orbit. Tonight's launch gives a perfect illustration of Arianespace's dual ambition. Be the leader on the commercial space transportation market while providing European institutions with guaranteed, independent and reliable access to space. In upper position, Thorsat, the second satellite launched by Arianespace for Telenor, will mainly strengthen Telenor's broadband communications offer to the maritime and offshore sectors. Let me take this opportunity to thank Telenor for their patience and for the trust placed in Arianespace, and more specifically Morgan Tent, its Chief Executive Officer, who attends the launch here with us tonight. Thank you very good. Thank you very good, Morgan. Congratulations also to Space System Loral, Thor 7 manufacturer. Thor 7 is a 47 satellite SSL to be orbited by Arianespace, and we have 15 more SSL satellites in our backlog. As a second passenger on this flight, Sicral 2 will provide Italian and French armed forces with secured communication services on the field, while increasing the space communication capability available for NATO countries. Just 1 year after having orbited Athena Fidus, Ariane 5 has played again a key part in the strategic partnership set up by Italy and France to develop a common policy regarding European security. So, I want to express my deepest gratitude to both entities for entrusting Arianespace. Both entities, I mean the Italian MOD and the French MOD. We have a lot of stars here in CSG tonight, not only in the sky. So thank you very much for your trust. I want to thank deeply Telespazio, our direct customer for this launch. We will deliver Göktürk 1A together next year with a Vega, and I am sure it will be a great success as well. Last but not least, congratulations to Thales Alenia Space, Sicral 2 manufacturer. With already 141 satellites launched since the very first steps of Arianespace, plus 10 currently in our backlog, and assigned to the 3 launch vehicle of our family, our partnership with STAS definitely is a major asset for European space industry. Following IXV technological demonstrator launched by Vega in February, following a pair of Galileo navigation satellites orbited by Soyuz in March, tonight's launch is the third in 2015 to be performed by Arianespace, this time with Ariane 5. We are well on track to repeat this year the operational record established last year, 11 launches from the Guyana Space Center. Ariane 5, tonight's vehicle, was the 78th of the series, but it was also the first delivered to Arianespace by our new prime and shareholder, Airbus Safran Launchers. I just want to express my gratitude to Airbus Safran Launcher for their decisive part in Ariane 5, 64th success in a row. Also, many thanks to all industrial entities working side by side with us, with ASL, with a special tribute tonight to the engineers located in Kongsberg, in Norway, and in Colleferro, Italy, in echo to the 2 satellites orbited earlier. Thanks as well to ESA member states for their unwavering support to the Ariane program. Thank you so much to our partners, the CNES CSG, for the outstanding availability of the spaceport. Thanks to our ground industrialists here in French Guyana, who have already started to prepare our next launches. Last but not least, I would like to thank warmly all Arianespace teams for their full dedication to our launches and to our customers. This is how we make the difference year after year, launch after launch. I now leave the floor to our customers and partners. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very happy and important day for Telenor Satellite Broadcasting. It's your wife. Thor 7 is now on its way to its final destination. The waiting time is over. We can focus on growth. Thor 7 will provide us with growth capacity so we can strengthen the position we have in both broadcasting and datacom. It's very good for the company. It's a pleasure for me to thank those that have made this possible. First of all, Ariane. Having 64 consecutive successful launches is not by coincidence or by pure luck. It's because you are professional and you do the right things. And we are very grateful. So thank you very much. SSL, we have worked hard with SSL over a long period. They have a very professional team, dedicated, hard-working team, and we are very pleased with the result. Finally, the Telenor staff. A big group of people, I would say all employees, have been involved in this project for many, many years. Working hard, sweating, suffering, probably crying. But today we have seen success. So thank you very much to all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear customers, Arianespace, dear colleagues, and co-passengers too. I'm delighted at having witnessed today at this successful launch carrying Sicral 2 and Thor 7 satellites in orbit. On behalf of Telespazio, I warmly congratulate Arianespace, Italian MOD, and French DGA for this success. Today's launch is an important milestone in our binational space capacities. In fact, Sicral 2 program represents the right example of what nowadays a large and complex space program has to be in the sense of teamwork and cooperation. It's a collaboration between two customers, Italian and French MODs. It's a public-private partnership between customers and industry, Telespazio. And it's an industrial collaboration between Thales Arianespace and Telespazio. Sicral 2 mission will play a strategic role in military tactical satellite secure communications, continuing a path that started since Sicral 1 satellite launched in 2001, followed by Sicral 1B mission co-financed by Telespazio and launched in 2009, and consolidated by the Athena Fidus satellite launched last year here, that provides added value security and emergency services. Dear customers, we as Industrial Consortium have built a satellite, have developed and installed the ground segment and the infrastructures both in Italy and in France. We are performing LEOP and right now in Fucino at our Telespazio premises, and we will perform in-orbit tests. But after that, in a few weeks, this business will be about you. Thanks to everybody, and Amma Signora.
Ladies and gentlemen, first let me say how proud and thankful I feel to be here today and celebrate this event, so important for all our community. As you know, our common adventure started almost 10 years ago, when in 2006, Italy and France signed a letter of intent for a bilateral cooperation, unique example in Europe, in the SATCOM domain, with the aim to develop in complementary way and with the share of relevant properties two satellite programs, Athena Fidus, launched last year and already operative, and Sicral 2. Today, with the excellent success of the Sicral 2 launch, we have accomplished the goal to have available a complete portfolio of MILSATCOM capabilities in terms of strategic and tactical military band, available also for supporting the civilian SATCOM in many other institutional contexts, for example, security, emergency, disaster relief, environmental calamities. Sicral 2 is intended to replace the first satellite of the Sicral constellation, Sicral 1, that in 2018, at the end of its extended operational life, will be deorbited. With Sicral 2, Italian MOD will continue to assure the communication support for all the critical missions where Italy could be involved, to satisfy national military and civilian emergency needs, and, last but not least, continue to offer SATCOM capabilities to NATO as requested in the NATO SATCOM post-2000 agreement. The success of today's launch is the result of synergic technical and operative efforts made by a lot of actors of the organization involved in the program. For that reason, on behalf of Italian MOD and in particular of Italian CHOP, I would thank the industries, Thales Arianespace and Telespazio for the competence put in design and the development of the satellite and the ground segment exploited in national control centers. The France MOD for the excellent contribution to the cooperation assured in the two programs Athena and Sicral. The direction of the Arianespace Center, CNES Arianespace, for the excellent management of all technical and operational sequence from the receiving of the satellite in March up to today's launch and orbit phase. Finally, but not less importantly, I would thank the Norwegian co-passenger Telenor to have been patiently waiting a few months longer for the availability of our satellite. Before moving to the end of my speech, let me express my last personal thanks to all technical and administrative personnel of the Italian and French MOD. In particular, I want to underline the great competence of the personnel from TELDIF Directorate, Contracting Authority, from the Control Center of Vigne di Valle, and from DGA, that, with absolutely competence, have followed all technical, programmatic, operational, and financial aspects of a program. Actually, the today launch was possible also thanks to all the pertinent and demanding activities made by such people in order to make the Sicral 2 satellite be delivered in time for the shipment in Guyana. Thank you all for the attention and good luck.
Bonjour à tous. Je suis très heureux d'être ici pour deux raisons.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today for two reasons. I was appointed in my present position just 4 months ago, and this is an opportunity for me to see our first launch. And I spent a lot of time with French-Italian cooperation, and Sicral 2 is a good example of successful cooperation. DGA wishes to continue developing this type of approach, which are in the end much more efficient than long speeches. Sicral 2 will enable France to ensure hardened, secured military communications, space of jamming, for instance, and it will enable us to preserve our strategic autonomy and preserve our independence in conducting external operations decided by France. Sicral 2 is the supplement to the other satellites in orbit and is part of the system of military satellite communications offered by DGA. It offers resilience and responds to the growing needs of the armed forces in the area of telecommunications. It is a part of our transition towards the next system, Syracuse and COMSAT, which France plans to start in 2015. I also wish to congratulate Arianespace for this new successful launch, as well as the industrial and technical teams which contributed in the success of this exceptional launch. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank all the participants to this launch, mainly Arianespace and his team. I remember that Sicral 2 is a satellite which is coming from a big cooperation between industries and MOD, as already mentioned by my colleagues and customers, and that has been developed in 5 teams in 12 main sites in Europe. So it's a big teamwork that has been put in place and will successfully final stage today with the launch. I would like to remind something that it's quite interesting for us, for Thales Arianespace, in the field of military telecommunications satellite, and is that level of investment that all the customers and industries has to put in this type of satellite, of mission, is really huge to keep the skills and the excellence of the companies. And we think that it's very difficult that in the near future some single nation could afford this type of investment. And cooperation will be a must for the next years. Cooperation means many things. Cooperation means cooperation between nations to share the costs. And by the way, Sicral 2 is like that with French and Italian MOD. Cooperation means cooperation with the industries. And by the way, Sicral 2 has a part of PPP, private-public investment, because Telespazio put money on this. And cooperation could mean also share between institution, defense mainly, and other type of business. And by the way, Athena Fidus was on this path, because it was for military and as well as for Italian Space Agency. So I have to say that the success of Sicral 2 today, which doubled the success of Athena Fidus last year, is the proof on the field that this type of approach works and works very well. So as Thales Arianespace, we want to continue on this path, and we are ready to cooperate on this type of programs, just to mention COMSAT NG in France, the next Sicral 3 in Italy, and the new program of European Defense Agency, GovSatcom, for example, which is another example of this. So I would like to, coming back to the teamwork we made, I would like to repeat something that we said yesterday during the dinner, and is that all together we designed the satellite, all together we produced a satellite. Today, all together we launched the satellite, and this together will last with the Italian MOD, French MOD, and industries for the next 15 years of operation in orbit. So good luck to Sicral 2 and Athena Fidus, and good luck to us. Thank you.
Mesdames, Messieurs, alors d'abord, je voudrais excuser Jean-Yves Le Gall.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to apologize for Jean-Yves Le Gall, who should have been here, but who was forced to return to Paris because we got a bit late. But the main thing is that we were successful, and I will speak his words and speak on behalf of NES. This new launch is the 64th in succession, and it placed in orbit Sicral 2, which is a very important communication satellite, as well as Thor 7, which is important for the European Space Agency as well. And I wish to say Sicral 2 is the equivalent of Athena Fidus, which we launched with Ariane 5 in February of last year. And this wonderful cooperation was due to agreements signed between the French and Italian MODs and CNES and the Italian agency, and indicating that the satellite should carry a payload for both countries. We found a model for the European Space Agency, which combines efficacy and speed, and France controls Athena Fidus, and Italy will control Sicral 2, and financially both states contribute more or less equally, just about equally, in the financial support of the program. And the success of this new launch is due to all of the industrialists, partners of CSG,
and Arianespace, all of those who enable the launch base to respond to the needs of European space industry. I wish to thank the forces who protect the CSD under the authority of the prefect, and also thank the teams of CNES, which played a major role this evening. Space defense programs, be it communication or observation satellites, are a fundamental element in any military operation, and we're extremely proud of the capacity of European countries and France that they have this capacity, and this demonstrates the importance of mastering these technologies for our sovereignty. Concerning launchers, I would like to remind you of the historic decision taken at the Luxembourg conference in December of last year, where it was decided to launch the development of Ariane 6. Thanks to the leaders of our countries, we were able to convince leaders of funding this new program. We've also launched the restructuring of the space industry to improve its competitiveness, which will benefit employment everywhere in Europe and in Guyana. TSD will be welcoming Ariane 6, and the work will be beginning this year. And the first request for proposal were launched just a few weeks ago. This launch of Ariane 5 was iconic for our defense and our space policy. And I would like to congratulate again all of you for your level of excellence and this unique capacity you have in cooperating and joining your efforts to write new pages in the long history of space. I wish to thank you all and thank you for your patience, and have a very nice evening.
Bien, donc quelques mots en français pour terminer. Donc pour,
just a few words in French to conclude, just to announce that there will be a launch for Direct TV, the American operator. It will be an all Direct TV launch. We will be launching Direct TV 1 and Sky Mexico 1, and we will be back in May with Ariane 5 for Direct TV. Enjoy the evening. Thank you all for your attention.
So, mission accomplished once again for Arianespace, and the third launch this year. Congratulations to everybody who's worked so hard to bring us to today, and congratulations to our customers, Telenor and Telespazio, and to the manufacturing teams, Space Systems Loral and Thales Alenia Space, and to the Italian and French MODs. 2 satellites now heading out on their journey to their final orbit. The best of luck to all the teams for the next phase of your operations. Thanks for joining us here live at the Guyana Space Centre. From me, Katie Haswell, goodbye.